All right, everybody, welcome back to Trigger Happy Tactical Podcast. And it's time to lock, load, and listen. Because today we're putting two high-performance staccatos head-to-head, a modified Staccato P and a Staccato XC. We're going to look at, is this high-dollar supercar of guns really worth the extra cash, or can a properly tuned hot rod give it a run for its money? Let's get into it and see what's up. All right, well, working at a gun shop and range, I get to meet some really awesome customers. And don't get me wrong, I get to meet some of the opposite too, but a majority of them are really cool people, right? And today's episode is made possible by one of those awesome customers. And a huge shout out to my dude, Will, who modified his Staccato P and wanted me to put it up against his Staccato XC, kind of give him a test, right? So let's see how his hot rod stacks up against his supercar. All right, so before we really get into the testing in these two types of guns, I just want to give you a little bit of brief on who Staccato is. And if you've never heard of Staccato, you're probably actually living under a fucking rock. It's unbelievable how many people come into the store and ask specifically for a Staccato. Even if they don't want to buy one, they at least have heard from a friend how kind of badass they were. Staccatos really are that. Staccato is a Texas-based firearms manufacturer that makes really premium, super kind of kick-ass guns. And of course, they've got that Staccato price tag attached to it too, right? Because good things usually cost a good amount of money. If you've ever heard of 2011, you know, somebody say, oh, what do you got? I've got a 2011, right? Or have mentioned 2011s. That's Staccato, right? Staccato is 2011, or 2011 is Staccato, depending on how you want to look at it. But they invented the 2011. Not the double stack 9mm 1911, but the 2011, which has become iconic to those double stack 1911 9mm. 2011 has kind of become the way that we just kind of call all of those sort of things, right? It's become the facial tissue / Kleenex thing, right? Where you have a double stack 1911 9mm, yeah, you're going to call it a 2011. That's just the way it is, whether it's a Staccato or not. So they've really built just a miraculous kind of empire up for this sort of thing. And hopefully we'll give you more information on Staccato in a later show when we do a Staccato interview. And I don't want to waste too much time on who Staccato is. If you've heard of Staccato, you've probably also heard of both of these two guns, the Staccato P and the Staccato XC. So who are our contenders? Well, let's first talk about the Staccato P, which is a modified Staccato P, right? And this is that modified hot rod. An MSRP on a Staccato P is $2,500 roughly. In total, with the mods that Will has put in here, you're looking at about $2,870, give or take, right? Can you get these parts cheaper? Can you get this gun a little cheaper? You can, right? But MSRP on all this sort of stuff is about $2,870. The mods that are in that Staccato P are an EGW ignition kit, which is about $150, red dirt trigger, which is about $70-ish bucks, and an Underworld Arms Cyclops compensator, which is about $150. So that Staccato P is this sum of all of these parts kind of put together, right? The Staccato P has a 4.4-inch bull barrel on it, and the stock trigger on a Staccato P is anywhere between like 4 to 4.5 pounds. This thing, though, has been modified to give or take about 2 pounds. This thing it's light. I have a few guns that are sub 2 pounds or hovering right around that 2 pound mark, and I got to say, this thing, it's there. It's near that 2 pound mark. I unfortunately didn't have a trigger pull tester on hand for this, but I just kind of went by feel, and I've got to say, this thing's got to be sub 2 pounds to right just cracking 2 pounds. Stock weight on a Staccato P is 33 ounces, but with this compensator, it adds a considerable amount of heft to this thing, and it brings it to 35.8 ounces, and that's some of the benefit of that. Now, Staccato markets the Staccato P kind of more as like a duty weapon, right? A shit hits the fan kind of gun. And that's how they've marketed this type of firearm. Now, it's definitely been hot rodded or been souped up past that, but that's originally how Staccato intended this gun to be. Now let's talk about the next contender, the Staccato XC. This thing is bone stock, but it's a bone stock factory supercar. I mean, this thing is, it's is the best way to describe it. MSRP on a factory Staccato XC is $4,300. MSRP, of course. It has a 5-inch island compensated barrel. The factory trigger sits right around 2.5 pounds, something like that. Weight on this total package in its stock form is 37.5 ounces. So really, it already has some size and weight over that Staccato P, even with that added on weight of that compensator. This, though, from Staccato is marketed as more of like a, I guess you'd say a precision race-ish gun. I know some guys who are running this for duty weapons, and I'm going to talk about that's a badass duty weapon, right? I mean, that's slick. And it's not really quite a race gun, right? Because I guess the classification that it would put you in a lot of competition, you'd be going against much bigger, badder guns, I guess you'd say. But still, it is definitely marketed as like a supercar, right? So when I took both of these guns, I did do a little bit of testing. And what did I use kind of as my benchmark for actually shooting testing, right? Actually, the live fire part of this. 2 simple drills. I did a single shot accuracy drill where I literally sat out on the range and I gave myself all the time in the world, no bench resting, right? But I gave myself all the time in the world to just sit there, really focus on my trigger pulls, really focus on ensuring I had the best accuracy possible, and just very slowly rolling off single shots to see how pretty, I guess you'd say, the group would be. And then I did bench rest them just on the magazine well and kind of repeat the same process. And I got basically the exact same outcome. Both these guns performed incredibly well. I mean, they were tack drivers, whether I bench rested it or I was standing for it. I will say the XC, it was slightly ahead, but that could be due to either physically the barrel length or just a little bit of human input, human error on the P caused the XC to be slightly ahead. But it really did have a better feel, right? It was more confidence inspiring that I was going to get better single shot hits out of the XC than the P. But I really would say it was not enough difference to matter in the real world of shooting. In fact, you'd be hard pressed to even figure out which one shot more accurately, even looking at the target. So it was a minimal difference. But I did have to pick a winner on this one. I'd say the XC just slightly eked ahead. The next thing that we did was bill drill, right? We did a kind of a modified bill drill. And basically what a bill drill is, if you're not sure with what a bill drill is you stand about 7 yards away. You use a basic like IPSC type cardboard target or the paper target version of it. And you fire 6 shots as fast as you can. Most of these drills are going to be from a holster and a draw. So basically you set yourself up a shot timer. When it goes beep, you draw your firearm. Put 6 shots as fast as you can within the alpha box of an IPSC target, right? That's that A box, or sometimes it's called a 0 box. That's that high center chest circle. So basically you stare at the center of that circle. When the shot timer goes beep, you draw, throw 6 shots on target. All those shots got to land within the confines of that IPSC alpha circle, that high center chest. For this test, however, I actually used 3 guns, and it's because I kind of wanted to have a bit of a benchmark on here. So I used 3 total guns for this. So I kind of threw in another gun. Each gun was run 3 times, and I was rotating between the guns after each singular run. I used a Zev OZ9 Elite as kind of like a mid-tier control gun, and it's a gun I've shot a whole lot. So it was kind of a good way just to give myself a kind of a mid-tier benchmarking for it, right? And so what I did is I shot cold the very first round with the Zev OZ9. Then I moved and did the bill drill with the Staccato P, and then I moved and did the bill drill with the Staccato XC, and then I came back and ran it a second time with the Zev, a second time with the Staccato P, and a second time with the Staccato XC, and then third time with the Zev, third time with the P, third time with the XC, and I wrote down my scores on those. So with the first hit on the Zev OZ9, now mind you, this was the very first shots that came out of me, right? When you really think about it, I came into this cold. This was the first shots on that bill drill, no warm up. The Zev, I got 2.74 seconds on. I immediately set that down, put a mag into the Staccato P, ran the exact same drill on the Staccato P, and ran a 1.94. That's a big difference, right? When you really think about it. Ish. Then I immediately put a mag into the XC, ran the bill drill, and got a 1.94. Yeah, I got identical to literally the hundredths of a second same from the Staccato P to the XC. That blew my mind. And yeah, I was considerably faster than the OZ9, but again, we can attribute that possibly to being the first shots out. Maybe I was a little bit cold. So then I came back, revisited the Zev again, and I got a 2.08. So markedly faster than I had gotten from the original shot. Picked up the Staccato P, ran a 1.92, so I did improve off my original time, not by much. Picked up the Staccato XC and ran a 1.72. That's a big jump. So while the OZ9 got considerably better, the P stayed basically the same. The Staccato XC got a good jump better my second run. Picked up the Zev again for 1.95, the P again for 1.77. So there we go. I got better again with the Staccato P. Then picked up the XC and ran a 1.74. So I was just a smidge slower the third run on the XC. I'm completely going to blame that on me, not on the gun, right? The gun's not getting slower as we're going. So really, if we look at the time, the Zev 2.74, 2.08, 1.95, the modified Staccato P 194, 192, 177, and then the Staccato XC 194, 192, 174. So what's the takeaway from the bill drill? Well, the fastest Zev run that I had was still slower than the slowest Staccato run that I have. The fastest run with that Zev was still slower than the slowest run with the Staccatos. The XC did edge out the P in speed, but not really by a huge margin. But what I would say is it felt more consistent. I felt like I can consistently be in that 1.7 range with the XC, where it felt like it maybe took a little bit more work on the Staccato P to stay consistent in that area. But again, who knows, right? I mean, there is always going to be a little bit of human error on that one. But both the Staccato P and the XC did kick the Zev's ass. I do have to say that. And no matter how you look at it, the Zev was the hardest one to control. It took the most work to get it to that 1.95, where the P and the XC kind of effortlessly went into 1.94 to 1.72 being the greatest of the runs I had on the Staccato XC. So fast runs from all three of those guns, but the Staccatos definitely outclassed the Zev, no questions asked. So some other impressions and analysis that I had on these things, the general feel of the two Staccatos, right, in dry fire and handling. So majority guns that I've got, I probably put way more dry fire rounds through the gun than I do put actual rounds through. And it's good because it's a great bridge to gap, a great bridge to get you to the times that you can actually pull the trigger. I will say through the dry fire and the handling of it, the XC has superior fit and finish. You can feel it. It's got smoother racking to it. It's just more. It just feels hot, right? It's got cleaner lines and it's got a stupidly crisp trigger, brake, and reset to them. I mean, the trigger just feels flawless, and it feels like it was all meant for itself. It is just this, I don't know, kind of really nice meld of things that you can tell were made to be with each other. The modified P feels more like a well-assembled custom build. It's got solid improvements over the stock one, but it doesn't feel refined. It feels good. It feels fast. It feels awesome, but it doesn't feel refined. It doesn't feel like those parts were factory built for each other. It feels like you've got that Chevy Nova that you have now gutted and put a bunch of parts into it, right? It still feels kind of like that Chevy Nova, but then it also doesn't feel like a Chevy Nova at all, right? So while it's a solid improvement over the stock, just not as refined. And I do got to say, one of the benefits is the P is a lot heavier than stock due to that compensator, which helps a lot. I mean, it helps a lot. Any of that weight that's forward, that trigger guard, let's say, is really going to help combat that muzzle rise and recoil. So the compensator does a good job of compensating, but it also does a great job at adding some weight to the front end of that gun, right? And under general shooting impressions, I mean, compared to the Zev OZ9 Elite, both Staccatos were faster, flatter, and much easier to shoot rapidly. I felt like if I kept shooting the Staccatos, I would get better and better times, and I would get faster and faster, possibly more accurate or tighter groups on there. Whereas the OZ9, I really felt like that's it. I kind of met the precipice of speed with that OZ9, at least where it is right now. But from a Staccato versus Staccato battle, this was way closer than I expected. I really walked into this going, I know who is going to win this. This isn't even going to be close. And then I'm going to tell you, it was really hard for me to declare that either of these two were markedly better or that any one of these was a superior firearm than the other was. This was just way closer than I had expected. And both guns' compensators did an excellent job at controlling muzzle rise. They're both different types of comps, but they both work really, really well. And you can tell that they did a great job at controlling that muzzle rise, right? That muzzle flip, that bring up of the front of that gun. Beautiful job, and much better in the Staccato P. From going from shooting a stock Staccato P to this upgraded Staccato P was a big difference for sure. And then you got to go down to the triggers. Both of these triggers were top tier. Both these triggers felt great. Was one better than the other on this? I don't know, to be honest with you. They were just both spectacular. It's like when you get to a certain point with triggers, they just feel fucking awesome, right? And I'm a trigger snob, and both these triggers felt just stupidly good. But that being said, that 1911/2011 double stack 1911, or whatever you want to call it, trigger is almost always spectacular, right? Because unlike a lot of triggers that have to arc to bring that trigger back and to bring that trigger forward, right, to bring that to the break on a standard gun, kind of creates this arc, right? Because the trigger swivels, right? And then when you release it, right, to go to that reset, it swivels back out again. Whereas that 1911 style trigger, it's literally straight forward, straight backwards. It's easy for the finger to understand. And they just have they just got a feel to them that's hard to describe and it's hard to beat, right? 1911 style triggers are they're badassery when it comes to triggers. So really, to end this all, what was the final verdict here? Like which one of these two guns wins if I actually had to pick one, right? I mean, remember, the whole goal of this when Will handed these to me was kind of like what did you think? What did you feel was the winner of both of these guns shooting? This is tough. This was a tough one. Both guns really did perform exceptionally well. And the difference was it was minimal. I mean, it was marginal in practical use. It really was. What I would say is the XC is this just refined, cohesive supercar. Everything in this gun really works in harmony, and it feels like a high-end precision machine with just beautifully matched body lines, right? It looks like just this precision supercar. But is it worth the $1,430 premium over the Staccato P in its built form? I mean, $1,430 is a decent chunk of change. Whereas the modified P is kind of like this hot rod that keeps up with that supercar, but for a much lower price. And for a much lower price, you get that near identical performance just without the seamless refinement of the XC. Because remember, we did have to have this factory car or this factory pistol, and then we had to heavily modify it to get the performance we needed to out of it to even run with that factory supercar or the XC. The other thing you want to look at with that P is because you did put that big compensator on the front that added all that weight, but added a lot of bulk to it, what's holster compatibility look like? That's going to be a huge drawback for the P, right? Finding a good fitting holster with that compensator is going to be one hell of a challenge. And it did add some heft and some bulk to it, right? So finding a way to carry this on your person might be a big challenge, whereas the XC is going to have more holster compatibility as far as that goes, right? So what really were my final thoughts? You can't lose with either of these guns. You really can't. I mean, they're staccatos, right? I mean, how do you lose with one? If you want the absolute best of the best of the best of these two guns, and you don't mind the price tag, honestly, I'd say spend the money and go with the XC. It's just better in what ways? I don't know. Very small, very marginal, and these had near performance matches to them. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about the XC that just felt a little more flawless, right? But if you want near match performance at a significantly lower price, go with the P. I mean, $1,400 is nothing to laugh at. I mean, that's a good chunk of change. It really is for most people, right? So if you want to have that same basic performance, go with the P, right? Now, one thing you do got to realize is if you go with the P, you've kind of already gotten this car up to speed, per se, of what you want it to be, but there's not much more to do from here, right? There's not a lot more you can throw at it to make it better, right? Whereas the XC is still stock. So now, can you throw some parts at the XC and make it even better than its factory form? Well, that's a possibility. Now here, I'm going to give you the real kicker on this one. We're going to jump back to Will, right? The dude whose guns these actually are. The guy who set this whole thing up. He actually prefers, when he tested these two, the modified P over his XC. He shot both of these head to head and kind of said that the modified P to him stuck out, right? It was a better shooting gun or just a better performing gun than his XC was to him. So if that tells you anything, it's that the hot rod can hold its own against that supercar. And to be honest with you, Will and I kind of come from two different shooting backgrounds, let's say, right? So that's probably why you've got two kind of different feels behind it, right? Will is a major enthusiast and shoots a lot and has some really fucking cool stuff, right? Whereas I'm shooting all day, every day, and I'm throwing tons of rounds. I'm shooting all types of different guns. So we have two kind of different backgrounds of shooting. And at the same time, that's the beauty of having two different opinions on this. So if I've got an opinion towards the XC, and it's barely towards the XC, and he's got an opinion that goes towards the modified P, well, do you lose on either of these? No. You really don't. So I would say if you're looking at it, figure out what you like, what you want. Are you that old school hot rod kind of guy that wants to modify them? Or are you kind of that McLaren kind of person where you just want to get that supercar in, you want to press that button, the thing revs up and you hear the engine scream and you're just ready to boogie without having to do any work for it? I don't know, man. That's up to you. But that's it for today's head-to-head battle. And trust me, there are going to be more of these with some real fucking cool stuff, right? But again, going back to whether you're a hot rod guy or a supercar fanatic, both of these Staccatos are absolute beasts on the range. Let us know which one you'd pick. Comment somewhere down below. Shoot us an email. Do something. Let me know which one you would pick. And don't forget to like and subscribe if that's the thing for where you're at, right? And we'll see you next time here on Trigger Happy Tactical Podcast.